Recording in progress.
Okay, I'd like to start the meeting for the Passcode Planning Commission of March 12th, 2024, and we'll start with roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Ottinger.
Here.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Burns has noted she would be absent tonight. Vice Chair Hanley.
Yeah.
And Chair Fritz.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And we do have a quorum this evening.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to comments from members of the public for items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if you have something to say to the Planning Commission about Planning Commission responsibilities, now is your opportunity to do so.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, we do have, Susie will have a timer. We'll take any comments from members of the public in the meeting room first, and then via Zoom, and we'll go back and forth. Chair Fritz, can you see if anyone in the room?
So it does not appear anyone in the room wants to, but I do see one hand raised on Zoom.
Okay, and then we do have one member on Zoom with a phone number, and I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute yourself. Susie will also ask you to unmute yourself.
You were talking to me?
Yes, Linda, we can hear you. Go ahead with your public comment.
You can hear me. I can hear you. I'm unable to hear Fritz. In the last few city council meetings I've had great difficulty in hearing what's going on. So I'm hoping that your techie person will fix this, and because I will. So there's a section that says, if you're unable to hear it, the whole thing has to be done, on the action items and stuff that the public cannot hear or you cannot hear. So hope it gets fixed. So now I'd like to start my 3 minutes. But anyway, I would just like to let you all know that the RV village, for one thing, has been a resounding disaster, as I've mentioned. I live properties from it, and so they're in the midst of clearing it so that your planned 22 units can be started to be built there. But it's the police are doing double duty, and facilitating that move, because there's been a lot of resistance, absolutely a lot of resistance. And I don't know if they've got that all out yet, but anyway, it turned into a drug den. It's just a terrible disaster. It was a shame too, because it was a pilot program. You'd think that city council and our mayor, Diana Rich, who was supposed to be the liaison there, would have kept an eye on that, to make sure that it was a success over the 2 years that it's run, and just devolved into a drug den with 4 deaths associated with it, and 3 fentanyl overdoses, rampant drug use, and a lot of theft from the stores in this town by the people who've squandered all the goodwill and money. Sorry to say, I'm putting blame on, somebody needs to take responsibility for it. I figure that the likely person is saves Adrian, who's a nice person, but apparently there was no oversight on this, and also our Mayor Rich, who needs to be removed. She needs to step down, because she's destroying this town in policies like this, where there's just no oversight, no paying attention, and then spending our money.
Thank you.
I am unable to hear you clearly, but go ahead.
So Linda, that she was noting your time is up.
Okay, I hope the technician can fix this so I can hear the rest of this meeting, please.
Yeah.
I can hear.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to make a public comment for items not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to any statements of conflicts of interest from the commission. And seeing none of those, we'll move on to approval of minutes. We have 5 sets of minutes to approve, going back way back in time. Let's start with January 24th, 2023. Any comments or revisions?
I move we approve the minutes as prepared.
I'll second.
Okay. Can we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Fernandez,
Aye.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Aye.
Vice Chair Henley,
Abstain.
and Chair Fritz.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 3-0 with 1 abstention. Vice Chair Henley, who was not on the commission at that time.
All right, next we have February 28th, 2023. Any revisions or motions?
Motion for approval of the minutes.
Second.
Let's have a vote, please.
Okay, Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Henley,
Abstain.
and Chair Fritz.
Aye.
Okay, that also passes 3-0 with 1 abstention of Vice Chair Henley.
All right, next we have March 28th, 2023. Comments or motion?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Thank you. And vote, please.
Okay, Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Henley,
Abstain.
and Chair Fritz.
Aye.
3-0 with 1 abstention of Vice Chair Henley. And again, thank you all for your patience as we are getting caught up on these minutes, as you see.
Next, we have August 15th of 2023. Any changes or motions?
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, Commissioner Fernandez,
Aye.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes.
Vice Chair Henley,
Abstain.
and Chair Fritz.
Aye.
Okay, 3-0 with 1 abstention of Vice Chair Henley.
And lastly, we have February 27th, 2024. A more recent memory.
Yeah, and not good ones, unfortunately. I understand that we wouldn't necessarily add a transcript of the public comments that were made at the last meeting, but I do think we need to acknowledge that we were Zoom bombed and Zoom bombed by racists. And the acknowledgement on the meeting minutes is so that it doesn't go unnoticed or so that it isn't forgotten. I don't know exactly what the wording would be here, but that the public meeting was hijacked by members of the public. I'm guessing not from Sebastopol, who had nothing beneficial to add to discussions around planning.
Is there some way to add a note at the beginning or something like that, Carrie, or?
So, so the question, I believe, was about the members of the public. Is that correct? And what they may have said and some of the disruptions we had?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate to acknowledge the disruptions.
Okay, so the way that action minutes work, which is what the city council directed all boards and commissions to move to, is that only actions, only the official actions of the planning commission are noted. So, if you saw from not the other minutes for this evening, but some of the other minutes in the past, it had what the public comment was, what the commission's discussion was, everything basically except for staff presentations. That is not action minutes. They're not quite verbatim, but they were much more detailed minutes. With action minutes, public comment is not noted. We can certainly note that there was some disruption that would be an addition beyond what is required by action minutes.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Excuse me, Carrie, were you, the last thing you said, that it could be added? This comment could be added or not?
So if right, if you'd like, under 4 comments from the public regarding items on the agenda, public comments, we could change it to read public comments were made. Some comments were not within the Planning Commission's purview. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what you would want to note here, Vice Chair Hanley.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I just don't want to gloss over it. It happened. It was horrible. I think it should be acknowledged in the meeting minutes.
So it could be some comments were made which were not within the purview of the Planning Commission. Public comment was continued to the end of the meeting, and then we should actually have, after the election of officers and subcommittee updates, that public comment was again taken, and so we could do that as a.
Okay, well, let's start there, and I guess we'll review these again when we come back to it next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Commissioner Hanley. I think at least at the very least, we need to mention the comments that were, like you mentioned, like you said, that were not purview to the Planning Commission, so that it shows we set a precedent for that. They were not, just decided to do that. So I think that's important for future meetings.
Okay, we can certainly add that to the notation on the item 4 of the minute, the comments, public comments.
Any other thoughts or motion
I'll go to motion for approval
with that revision?
with that revision. Thank you. Those revisions.
Okay.
Yes, second the motion with those revisions.
Okay, then we'll have a vote, please.
Commissioner Ottinger,
Yes,
Commissioner Fernandez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Henley,
Aye.
and Chair Fritz.
Aye.
Okay, so that passes 4-0 as amended.
Great, thank you. So I think we're done with the minutes. So item 6A, our public hearing on 1009 to 1011 Gravenstein Highway North, canopy, conditional use permit, density bonus for increased building height, certification of the environmental impact report, and a tentative map. So we have a staff report, please.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Fritz. So as you mentioned, this project is for 1009, 1011 Gravenstein Highway North. The project is named the Canopy. This project includes the construction of 80 solar all-electric 3-story townhome condominiums with the potential of 16 ADUs. The following entitlements are required for city review: a conditional use permit for 100% residential in an office light industrial zone, a vesting tentative map, the environmental review. These entitlements are in the purview of the Planning Commission and City Council. Additional entitlements that the Design Review Board will act on are the site and design review and tree removal. The applicant has also applied for a state density bonus waiver to increase the building height to 3 stories. City Council will be the final review authority. The Planning Commission is responsible for providing recommendation on both the CEQA EIR and entitlements of this project. So a quick project history. The Planning Commission first saw this project at their preliminary review on October 8th of 2019. At that time, the project was proposed for 100 total units and no ADUs. The formal application for the project was received in November of 2022, with revisions from that preliminary review that the applicant heard at the meeting. These plan revisions involved 80 units with the 16 ADUs and modifications to the site to save additional trees and increase setbacks in response to preliminary comments. The city determined that a full environmental impact report, or an EIR, should be done for the project given its size and complexity. A scoping session meeting was held on July 18th of 2023 to allow the public to provide input on the scope of the environmental impact report. On December 7th of 2023, the draft environmental impact report was made available to the public for a 45-day comment period, which ended on January 23rd, 2024. During that period, a public meeting was held on January 23rd to allow the public to provide comments to the draft EIR. Tonight, March 12th of 2024, we're here for the final EIR, which includes responses to those comments and recommendations to council for the final certification and entitlements. Some additional background on this project. This project site was identified as an appropriate site for housing with 80 units and up to 16 ADUs in the city's housing element. The housing element was reviewed by the Public Planning Commission and Council prior to its adoption in 2023. These units would count towards the city's above median income and moderate income RENA targets, which is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. This project was also submitted under Senate Bill 330, which is the Housing Accountability Act. For a project to be denied under this, it would have to be inconsistent with the general plan, housing element, zoning, and subdivision standards, or have significant health and safety issues. The Planning Commission is responsible for reviewing for consistency with these standards, which is what is before the Commission tonight. The Commission should hear these reports, hold a public meeting, and deliberate the project and its entitlements, including any modifications or additional conditions of approval, and then consider adoption of these resolutions. Some of the components that are not part of the EIR, but were mentioned in the draft environmental impact meeting, were access to Hurlbut for both vehicle and emergency related access. With that, there is an access agreement that does not allow any vehicle access during to Hurlbut Avenue. The other component was building height, and as noted in the staff report, the building height of the proposed buildings are roughly 13 feet shorter than what was originally part of the O'Reilly development. With that, I'm going to conclude my staff report. There's a lot of information in there. I'm happy to go over any questions that the commission may have. And I also want to next pass it off to Katie Green, who's here on behalf of Rincon Consultants, who did the environmental impact report, should you have any questions as they relate to them. I will note also that Zach from W-Trans is here if there are any questions related to traffic concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have questions of staff? Go ahead.
I actually just want to disclose I met with Samantha Hauser, one of the applicants, to clarify some parts of the project. So at this point, I don't have any questions.
I also met with Samantha.
As did I.
As did I. Do any of the commissioners have any other questions of staff this time? Okay, seeing none. Does the applicant like to make any presentation? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to get my computer and share my screen. So if you could give me 1 second to try and figure out the tech. John, can you confirm that that's working? Looks like it's working. Okay, great. Well, good evening, commissioners. I'm Samantha Hauser. I'm with City Ventures, and I'm so excited to be back before you tonight to talk about the Canopy project. Before I go into project specifics, I wanted to give a little bit of information about our company. City Ventures is an infill developer as well as a sustainable developer. Our projects are solar all electric. There's no gas. Solar panels come standard on the homes. There's EV charging, Nest thermostats. We design creatively to use less lumber, lower amounts of Portland cement in our concrete mixes, low impact landscaping, low flow water. I mean, the list goes on, and I could talk about this for a long time, but I think it's important to mention some of these things in the context of California's current climate. As infill developers, all of our projects look different, whether that means they have a different architectural style, a different program, different scope, scale. And I think what's important to note is that it's our job as infill developers to understand that we're not the first into a neighborhood. So the goal is to figure out how to integrate seamlessly into the fabric of the community. And that's a really nice dovetail into the project schedule that John mentioned in his staff report. So we've been working on this project for a long time. It's been 5 or 6 years. We started the project back in 2018. It's a site that allows 153 homes on it. And our original application back in July of 2019 had 103 homes. We did a citywide community meeting. We met with all of the staff departments. We did a study session with this commission, with the DRB, and we got a lot of different points of feedback. And a couple of themes started to emerge, and I wanted to kind of touch on those. So we heard a lot from the single family homeowners adjacent to the site about concerns on intensity, wanting to maybe reduce the amount of homes and make sure that there was an appropriate buffer between the project and their properties. We heard a lot about seniors and people looking for step-down housing and lower maintenance obligations. So we were tasked with also paying close attention to ADA accessibility here. And then one of the other important ones was figuring out how to create entry-level housing for families with school-aged children. And there again were a lot of other points of feedback, but those were the big ones. And so we got together with staff. We really tried to coalesce all of the different things we heard. We paid really close attention to the city's housing element process. And the project that's proposed tonight, as staff mentioned, is 80 homes. That's 100% consistent with what was anticipated in the housing element, and it's consistent with the general plan. So with that being said, we're really excited about the project, and we're respectfully requesting your recommendation on our vesting tentative map and our CUP. I think everyone's familiar with the site, so I won't go too deeply into the context, but I did want to note how cool it is that the site is so accessible. There are 3 bus routes, some are weekday only, that serve the site. It's bikeable, it's walkable, it's adjacent to the West County Trail. It's less than a mile from the central core. It's less than a mile from 2 city parks, a quarter mile from grocery and retail. So we really wanted to take that walkability and bikeability and use those points as inspiration for how we treated the interior of the site as well. And I'll touch on that on future slides. The site is not really visible from 116. There are a lot of mature right-of-way trees on 116, and the O'Reilly buildings are 40 and 50 feet, as staff mentioned. But I did want to kind of highlight some of the peekaboo areas on the bottom 2 pictures, because there are going to be some places where you can see the site. And then if you look at the left-hand site, letter A, that's what the existing site looks like now. It was used for agricultural purposes from the 40s through the 90s and has been largely vacant since the O'Reilly EIR was processed. Which brings us to the site plan. We spent a lot of time looking at how to orient buildings here. And I'm going to just kind of start with the 2 property lines that we really looked a lot at. We wanted to, again, create a lot of room between the single family property owners behind the site and our project. So we worked really closely with staff on moving our buildings inward. We involved the project arborist in our design and our civil engineer to make sure that a lot of those mature trees were preserved. And that also led to this really amazing advent of a lot of open space here. So this is a site that allows 40% lot coverage. That's kind of where we started in 2019. We were able to reduce that down to 26% lot coverage. And then I mentioned, a lot of open space. The city requires 50 square feet of open space per home. That's only 4,000 square feet. We're at 124,000 square feet. So 30 times over what the city requires was programmed into the site. It's somewhere between 13 and 1,400 square feet per homeowner of common usable open space and a couple hundred square feet of ground floor private usable open space. And that doesn't count the fact that each home has a second floor deck with another couple hundred square feet of private open space. So that's something that I think is really, really cool here. We also wanted to make it about the trees, with staff and the city's kind of heritage tree ordinance pushing the preservation aspect. We wanted to use the trees as amenities. So preserving two really beautiful coast live oaks as you drive in, putting passive open space under them. We've added a couple of amenities to the central area for children. And then we have another amenity space up on this other side of the site, a hammock garden, a children's play area. There's a public access path that we're proposing through the site. And so we're proposing Gravenstein apple trees adjacent to that pathway. So as you're walking through, whether you live here or you're a member of the public, you could pick an apple. We also have 2 access points with the public that are kind of new or bolstered. This is something we work really closely with Carrie and John on. So the existing access point to the West County Trail would be bolstered. We've widened it to make it wide enough for 2-way bike traffic. We've added a bike repair station. That was something that Sonoma County Bike Coalition recommended. And then we've also added a pedestrian access point off of Hurlbut. And those pass through the sites, which currently you'd have to walk through the O'Reilly parking lot to get to 116. We're going to formalize a path of travel through an easement on the O'Reilly media site. I know that the DRB is really where the design comes into play, but I did want to talk a little bit about architectural inspiration. We're looking at really clean lines here, traditional architecture style. We wanted to pick kind of more reserved color palettes to be in keeping with kind of the natural feel of the site and the O'Reilly building, even with its new paint scheme. We wanted to have a lot of articulation, so projections, recesses, different planes. And then I wanted to get back to something I started with, which was the orientation of the buildings on the site. We made sure to interface as many of the buildings as possible so that they side on property lines. And you'll see the bottom 3 elevations on this slide show the windows on the 3rd floor. Those are high windows so that light can come in, but people cannot see out, which adds to the privacy component here. And then I'll just end on the landscaping. We were really going for vibrancy, organic cues. There's no like children's play area with a big yellow flag in it or, made of plastic. It's climbing rocks, climbing logs and, different things for different age groups, passive and active open spaces. We're looking at having a plant, like a butterfly and bird garden with fog collectors in it. So just a lot of stuff that I think is really cool. With all of that being said, we're so grateful for all the time that staff and Rincon put into this project. I mean, to have a 1,000-page staff report is very unique. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate everything that you've done. We're really honored at the opportunity to become part of the city and happy to answer any and all of your questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant from the commission? Go ahead, Everett.
Thank you for presentation and great information. Just a couple questions. You mentioned Gravenstein apples. Who would be the caretaker, or is there, and also of the grounds? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So this project comes with an HOA. And so the Property Owners Association, the HOA, would maintain the apple trees. This is something we've done on a lot of projects. We have projects in Scotts Valley with apple orchards. We do community gardens and urban agriculture on a lot of our projects. So this works really well because there's a natural funding mechanism in here. And that's the same thing for all of the amenities. The public access trail is not a burden of the city. It's paid for by the homeowners, but it's usable by the whole city.
Okay. Let's see. I'm not sure if I heard you cover the height and what that kind of allows as far as the space that you have, and if you can maybe mention a little bit about that.
Sure. So this is the site has kind of some unique zoning here. So the current site allows for 40 feet in height, and I'll let John chime in if I get any of this wrong, but it allows for 40 feet in height, but only 2 stories. We're proposing 37.5 feet in height, so less than the actual total height, but because it's 3 stories, we're requesting a state density bonus waiver to make sure that that third story is allowed in here. It is shorter than all of the existing O'Reilly buildings that are currently built.
And then by doing the third story, what does that allow you to do as far as open space and homes and so forth?
Absolutely. So it's a great question. Having the third story allowed us to bring all of the buildings further westward. So creating, there's maybe a couple of pinch points where you're at 20 or 28 foot setbacks, which are consistent with the city's requirements. But on almost all of the Winona residential side, we're in the 40, 50, 60, and 70 foot setback ranges. So having that additional buffer came out of going to those 3 stories. It also allowed us to have that reduction that I talked about in intensity with the 40% lot coverage going down to the 26% lot coverage and the extra square footage and open space. I mean, it's almost 3 acres of usable open space on this site.
I think that's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Kathy?
Yes, you showed a slide of the design and you pointed out the entrance, which I think is to the north near the West County Trail. Is there another entrance at all to the site? Would you point that out on the map, please?
Sure. I'm just trying to get back to the site plan. Give my screen a second to catch up. So this is actually here we go. Okay, so here's the site plan. So there are 2 vehicular entrances into the site. This was governed by the fire department, but is also good planning, right? So there's a kind of key entrance in here. This is the one with the focal point of the oak tree that I'm really excited about. There's also a second entrance that's being added on the south, which is planned right here, that goes straight back and into this area. Those are the only vehicular access ways. As staff mentioned, there is a restriction on hurlbutt that's recorded. It's a recorded covenant. There are 3 pedestrian access ways into the site. There's this one on hurlbutt. There's one here on, or actually there's 4, I'm sorry. There's one here at the West County Trail. There's one here at the north portion of the site. And then there's this new one off of Highway 116.
Thank you for covering all of that.
Sure.
Go ahead, Seth.
Thanks. Is that me? Can you talk a little bit about the datum of the ground plane and how it relates to adjacent properties? The 37.5 feet height that you mentioned, obviously,
Sure.
could potentially vary.
Sure. That's a great question. The site, as it goes from west to east, actually slopes down a little bit. So I wonder if I can, here we go. So this fence plan is going to come into use.
Mm-hmm.
So there's very limited retaining on this site. The yellow are retaining walls, and they're all 3 feet or less. We have a civil engineer that worked really, really closely with our arborist.
Mm-hmm.
The defining feature that we cannot change grades around here are the trees, right? If we grade below the root line, they die. If we add too much soil on top of them, they die. So all of this that's in here is going to be the same grade that it is now. And this did come up at the EIR meeting, and I wanted to clarify. So one member of the public had said, well, we don't know if it's 37.5 feet above, like what it's going to be when the finished pads are incorporated. That is with the finished pads incorporated. So that's 37.5 feet total height. There's no like secret berm that they're being built on.
Thank you.
Actually, kind of just leave the slide up. So if I
Sure.
understand, so for the yellow, there's a yellow retaining wall that sort of spans 2 buildings. So the retaining wall is, I'm trying to explain this. So the buildings are kind of at the bottom of the retaining wall, and the existing trees are at the top. So those are being pushed down, correct?
Correct.
Is that right?
The
The
buildings
buildings are being pushed
The buildings
down.
are lower than the retaining wall.
Yeah.
That's correct. And again, they're not big retaining walls, but it is, we have to respect the tree roots.
Go ahead, Everett.
Yeah, actually. And then could you identify, you mentioned play areas
Yes.
that are on there. Could you identify where those are located?
Yes, absolutely. So there is a children's play area that's in this area of the site. And then what's been added recently, although it's not shown on this slide, it is in the stamped drawings that are in the resolution, is a kid's sound garden underneath this oak tree so that there is more children's play in this area as well.
Let's see. Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the commission? Okay, at this point, I will open up to members of the public. You'll have an opportunity to speak about the project. We will go kind of members in the room, and then we'll go to Zoom, so we'll go back and forth. If you have a comment, you can please come up to the podium, and we'll start with someone in the room. Welcome. Yeah, John, can you get a plan up on the screen?
Thank you. Jacob Harris, I live on Hurlbut. I spoke the last time we had a meeting. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I would love to have a company like that. You know, it seems like you guys put a lot of good energy into this. You've been working on it for a long time, and you're obviously going to make a lot of money. It's a really impressive project. Anyways, what a good idea for. Though I take issue with some of the things you're saying. It was important to you that this project runs seamlessly with the current neighborhood or the community. It doesn't. It's not at all seamless. Imagine you have a house, and let's say it's this tall right here, and right about over where this is that tall. That's essentially what we're talking about. And so somebody like Troy or Drew who are in the neighborhood, they look out their window and boom. It wasn't like that before. Now all of a sudden they have these huge monolithic structures looking down on them. I don't think that's seamless. And I don't know how you can say that this runs completely according to the general plan. How you could say that and really mean that and say that honestly. Because the general plan very clearly, and I outlined the points last time where it is not inconsistent with the general plan. I mean, I can run it, you can look at the notes from last time. It's very clearly is not with the general plan. If you'd like, we'll go over that again. And in addition to that, one thing I found out after going home and reading the EIR, one of the components is the project has to be according to the general plan. So that's a double thing. It's not just what you say, but it's also what the EIR says. And that's written clearly on the EIR. So I'd like to see where you think this is seamless.
30 seconds.
Seamless and how it actually fits the general plan. It doesn't. There's no neighborhoods that look anything like this, no residential neighborhoods that are butt up to it or even close by that are 3 stories. And 37 and a half feet, does that include the foundation? Are you including the foundation? You are? Okay. So 37 and a half feet, but the homes nearby are 15 feet. And they're right next door. So I will finish, but can I show you on the map where that is?
Very quickly.
Here's, I believe this is Drew's house right here, and this is 37 and a half feet. This is a long ways away. It's right there. Does it make sense? This plan doesn't make sense.
Thank you.
Kind of way down.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to make a comment? Let's see.
Hold on a second. I am looking. A bit harder with the gallery. Yes, there's Lauren Russo. Lauren, let's see, Susie, can you ask Lauren to unmute herself? All right, Lauren, can you make your public comment?
Yes. Good evening. I'm a managing attorney at the Eviction Defense Center, which is a small nonprofit that assists roughly over 2,000 people per year with their most pressing housing issues. And I'm calling to express my support for this project. These are the exact types of homes that we need to be approving for the sake of people looking to buy their first homes. I know firsthand that it's become exceedingly difficult for first-time home buyers to enter the housing market. I'm also pleased to see that this project has 3 times more ADA accessible housing than required, which allows seniors and people with disabilities to participate in homes that would typically target a younger market. The city recognized in its housing element that this site is the right place for 80 homes. And I agree that an infill site in the city's core is exactly where we should be putting or where we should be building housing. I also think that it's respectful that the developer reduced their proposal to 80 homes on a site that allows for 153 homes in order to be consistent with the city approved in the housing element. So I really support and encourage the Planning Commission to recommend approval for this project. It is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Lauren. And we'll go back to the room. Chair Fritz.
Yeah, anyone in the room like to make a comment? Please step up to the podium.
Good evening, Chair, Planning Commission. My name is Troy Eggleston, a resident of Hurlbut Avenue. More specifically, the owner of the lands of Eggleston to the adjacent northern property of this proposal. I think we'll kind of echo some of the comments from the previous meeting and what was spoken just briefly about the compliance with the general plan. We're looking at some of the design components. I understand effort has gone into integrating into the design and the limitations. It's an awkward shaped property. I know that there was an allocated density that's issued to this in the general plan. I know how this works here, being an author of a general plan here in the Sonoma County area. We see and we integrate those numbers, and other developers try to use those values and incorporate that into the overall design. So those are numbers that were issued by volume and acreage, but we're looking at the specific function of how this is actually working. I don't see the policies of the general plan being adhered to with how the size, the surrounding areas, nothing to the east, north, south, anything is in of this height that's been sort of administered through this density bonus. It feels like the state of California has an influence on the design for this town. I don't think they necessarily care what that looks like. I think they would have to go back and have a little bit more of an integration to the community. How would this work? How does this fit into this environment? Because right now it doesn't. Another issue that I see as a concern, there's an access point on Hurlbut Avenue. I don't know if there's any proposed curb, gutter, sidewalk, safety amenities for traffic, pedestrians, bicyclists. You're gonna have people popping out there and they're gonna get smeared. I don't know how this has been overlooked. people go onto that bike path and they jump right through Hurlbut Avenue. There's a stop sign there. I've seen enough collisions or near collisions. There's going to be a problem at this intersection where you're having people, pedestrians, family members, people on bikes, they're going to pop right back out on that road. And I haven't heard anything about anything mitigating traffic, anything mitigating the people for warning, how that's going to impact me pulling out of my driveway, having people walking in and out of there without, any type of infrastructure to support any of the drainage or walkways. There's a ton of things that are being overlooked. And here's another example of just, we're going to start plopping in access points to places that are not suitable. And here's another example of
30
where it's
seconds.
not. You look at how this essentially has been put together with the height, again, coming full circle. If the pad is only going to be 13 feet, or the height is only going to be 13 feet lower than the tallest building, which was one that we asked 20 some odd years ago not to be built, it isn't built around the existing community. This stands out like a sore thumb. Anyone can see it. I think that it just needs to be taken back and observed. How does this fit in better? Because right now it doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Next, we'll go online.
Okay, thank you so the next comment is Linda. Linda, can you unmute yourself?
You hear
Okay,
me?
Linda, go ahead and, yes, we can. Go ahead with your public comment.
I am telling you again, I cannot hear any of the planning commissioners or the people at the microphone. I can hear you clearly. I could hear the Lauren person clearly, but I cannot hear the rest of it. It's just very important. This particular issue, I am heavily invested in this since I live on the corner of Hurlbut and 116 for like 22 years, and I go on the trail just about daily, and so and I also have the entire draft, the environmental impact draft, and I've put a lot of time and energy into looking it over, and I'm heavily and vehemently opposed to this project. We don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the water. Their estimate that it'll use 10.3 million gallons of water annually, and it'll contribute to 214 tons of garbage. And the vehicle miles, the traffic is just, they did not take into consideration the intersection of 1, 15, and 12, the impact there, but it's just outrageous, the impact that it have on this town. But the main thing I want you to know right now, I cannot hear this thing. And so we're going to find out if I can have this meeting done all over again, because I need to be able to hear and participate in these meetings, city council too. I may be the only one with a landline phone because I'm electrosensitive, but I need the accommodation. I have a right to hear clearly, and it can be fixed because it has been done before. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have to lawyer up, apparently, Carrie, unless you direct the IT person to fix it. And I'm fully willing to cooperate to see that before these meetings begin that I have access to it. So I'm going to have to apparently talk to Don, the manager, and like I said, lawyer up on the section 54960.1 entitles me to hear and participate in these meetings. So please direct your IT person to fix it so that I can hear. Please. Thank you. Otherwise, that's what I'm going to do. Talk to Don and lawyer up. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, for your comment. So we'll go back to the room. Chair Fritz?
Very good. I certainly hope you can hear me well. Good evening. My name is Simon Raya. Members of the Planning Commission and fellow Sebastopol residents, thank you for hearing me out tonight. I stand before you tonight as a realtor and resident, deeply rooted in Sebastopol's history and its future. In 1989, my family moved to Sebastopol and made it our home after relocating to the from the East Bay. Since then, I've seen our town evolve, and while many changes have been positive, I'm deeply concerned about the direction we're heading. Sebastopol is renowned for its sense of community, charm, and natural beauty. But we're at a crossroads where the voices of a few threaten to drown out the needs of the many. It troubles me to witness and hear the outsized influence of those content with the status quo of their own housing while ignoring the broader impact on our community. As a resident who's witnessed the effects of limited housing and inventory firsthand, I refuse to stand idly by as Sebastopol becomes an exclusive enclave akin to those in Marin County or elsewhere in Sonoma County. Our town should be accessible to all, not just a privileged few. The current average home price is $1.6 million. It is staggering and unsustainable. It's driving away young families and other individuals who, like myself, want to further put our roots down here in Sebastopol. We cannot allow our town to become a place where only the wealthy can afford to live. Sebastopol's legacy is one of inclusivity and opportunity. Let's honor that legacy by embracing responsible growth, like the canopies here at Gravenstein Highway. So I want to ensure that housing remains within reach for everyone, and it's time for the council to prioritize the needs of our community over the desires of a select few. Thank you for your time and consideration. And to make myself very clear, I'm in full support of the canopies at Gravenstein Highway. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Let's go back to online.
Thank you, Chair Fritz. So our next commenter is Phil Carter. Phil, if you could, we'll ask you to unmute yourself, if you could do so and make your public comment.
Hello. I just want to note that I'm for the project. I see some very good work, and I feel like the height will blend in eventually, and this town doesn't really have a whole lot of continuity, so I feel like it worked that way. In the past are looked after. The entrance onto Hurlburt, I think, could be an issue. So, like, but that's so modest. It's not a big deal. And I appreciate all the concern with how they're faced. I would love to see it over solared, like have plenty of capacity for production and possibly some batteries for cars. But that's not neither here nor there. But I definitely appreciate the project, and I would support it.
Thank you, Phil. Back to you, Chair.
Anyone else in the room like to make a comment? Please step up to the podium.
Good evening. Good to be here. My name is Alex Gansler. My wife, toddler, and 2 dogs rent a home in Sebastopol. My wife is a Petaluma native. I've spent almost my entire life in Sonoma County, mostly in Sebastopol, including attending Apple Blossom Elementary, Twin Hills Middle, and Annalee High Schools. I'm here to say that housing is too expensive and too unavailable in Sebastopol, and I believe that the Canopy project can be a step towards rectifying that reality. To illustrate that observation, bear with me for a quick budget exercise. According to local real estate experts, Simon being one of them, the average home price here is $1.6 million. If you wanted to purchase one of those homes using the gold standard of home purchasing in this country, a 20% down payment, a 30-year mortgage, you'd have to plunk down a $320,000 down payment and then be paying nearly $11,000 per month for 30 years to cover your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Now, most personal financial advisors would say you should spend no more than 30% of your gross household income on housing. So under this scenario and prices I've laid out, a new home buyer in Sebastopol should be bringing in approximately $432,000 per year to service their home. That's the average home. According to the US Census, the average income for a household in Sebastopol is $98,000 per year. That's 2018 to 22 and 2022 dollars. So the argument is a community where the average home buyer needs to earn 4.5x the average household income to purchase the average home is not a sustainable or accessible community. The housing is too expensive to even consider for the average family. Now, a few anecdotes to wrap up. El Molino High School, my rival high school growing up that we used to have the Apple Cup with, closed. Why did it close? Because it suffered a 20% decline in enrollment from 2011 to 2021. There are literally not enough families in Sebastopol and West Sonoma County to fill the schools. That's tragic to me. And I wonder what other community institutions we could lose without literally new blood, new families, new celebrations coming in. Are we going to lose the Apple Blossom Parade? Are we going to lose the Gravenstein Apple Fair? The 3rd of July fireworks already seem a bit tenuous. I copy and pasted a couple Nextdoor posts on here. I'm not going to read them verbatim, even though they're powerful. But one is from an elderly person seeking housing, and one is from a millennial family who's pregnant and has a 7-year-old in Sebastopol schools seeking housing.
30 seconds.
And they might be not able to find it in Sebastopol because it's too expensive. So in conclusion, we know seniors need housing. We know millennials and young families trying to find their American dream need housing. There's no silver bullet to solve the housing crisis in Sebastopol or the rest of the state or the country. But homes that are green, along the bike path, close to services and restaurants, a lot of which are owned by community members, is a really good start. I believe the Canopy project is the right project and the right place to serve our community now and in the future, and I implore the Planning Commission to be a part of that solution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else online with a comment? I'm not
Okay, and Chair Fritz, I am not seeing anyone else on Zoom with their hands raised.
No. Anyone else in the room like to make a public comment?
Oh, sorry, we do have a couple more.
Just popped up. Okay.
Okay, so Julio Caceres. Julio, we'll ask you to unmute yourself, and then please proceed with your public comment.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about this project. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Just on the comment of the prior lady that talked about the not listening well, the comments of the chairman and commissioners and people at staff at the meeting is very accurate. It's really hard to listen to it on a Zoom meeting. So accommodation in that regard will be very good. But then the comment is to support the project. I don't know if you can continue listening well, but to support the project, I own 2 houses developed by City Venture. One in Fox Hollow in Santa Rosa, the second one in Round Barn in Santa Rosa. I'm very pleased that the City Venture have chosen Sebastopol as opportunity to develop more property in Sonoma County, which is very needed in the community for housing. Definitely there is a shortage of housing in the marketplace, and they are choosing to develop and engage in enterprise in Sonoma County and choosing Sebastopol for that reason, and a good sized lot. Thinking of all the walkability, bikeability, traffic, and all those aspects of development. And honestly, I don't think that City Ventures has a project already in Sebastopol, but I can speak for the quality, the reputation, and the background of the company, owning 2 properties in Santa Rosa that they developed in the prior years after the fire. I lost my house in the fire, didn't have a place to go, and was very pleased of finding a home in Fox Hollow in Fulton Road in Santa Rosa. And it was a little far from the school for the kids, and they developed another project close to Fountain Grove in Santa Rosa, and that's where I live today. The quality is good, the reputation is good. I am 100% support of the project, and I suggest and recommend City Council and the Planning Commission to approve this project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio. Back to you, Chair Fritz, for any further comment in the room.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Good evening. My name's Ann Casey Nielsen. I was at the last meeting. I'm also living on Hurlbut Avenue. I own a house and land there and right up the block from Jacob. I'm just going to reiterate pretty much what I spoke about at the last meeting that is completely against the general plan. I propose for disallowment of the state density bonus, striking any and all potential waivers to increase the building height to 3 stories. Any allotment of said aforementioned waiver would be a direct violation with Sebastopol's general plan, policy CD 1-2. I don't know if I need to reiterate parts from the general plan. We should know that. It's our Bible, isn't it? Ensure that new residential and commercial development is sensitive to the surrounding architecture, topography, landscaping, character, scale, and ambience of the surrounding neighborhood. The project plan is 100 units and will likely be over 40 feet tall, including foundations. Currently, there are 0 residential buildings in our neighborhood with this height or density. In summation, I strongly oppose to the project altogether. However, I'm willing to civically compromise to a 2-story edifice instead. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank
comment.
you. And next we'll go to Sean McGuire. Sean, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I don't really have a position for or against the project. I mean, housing is absolutely needed in every town in Sonoma County. I do think the presentation and the developer has not really addressed the reality of how people get to and from their houses. Public transportation is limited. A lot of people don't like to bike to work. So they're going to be using those driveways as entrances and exits. And I didn't really hear any mention of that in the presentation. And I think that should be discussed a little more. I think that's probably all I have to say.
Thank you for your public comment.
Anyone else in the room? Okay, I see one more person on Zoom. Let's go to Sarah.
Yes, thank you. Sarah, can you unmute yourself and go ahead with your public comment?
Hi, my name is Sarah J., and I live in the county. I'm calling to voice my support for the project. This project came to my attention when a neighbor posted something about the height on Nextdoor. But after reviewing the staff report, I don't see what the concern is. 37 feet is taller than the O'Reilly office buildings, and all of the trees they're keeping are at least that tall. They could have gone up to 40% lot coverage, and they're only at 26%. And they could have proposed 153 homes, but yet they only proposed 80. Sebastopol really needs more entry-level housing, which is this. I'm glad to see housing proposed here where we planned it and not a mile off the beaten path. I want to read some of the responses on the Nextdoor post because not everyone has time to show up on a Tuesday night. We need more families with children. Otherwise, many schools will be in danger of closing. How many young families can afford to live in Sebastopol or anywhere in West County? 100% in favor of additional higher density housing in and around Sebastopol. Can't wait to see this completed, especially so close to schools and bike paths. Hopefully this will attract younger families so Sebastopol can continue to stay vibrant. The height and density is exactly what will make it more affordable than most Sebastopol housing and the infrastructure that was required when the site was developed for commercial use. Given its proximity to shopping, banking, and other services a half mile away, residents would be able to avoid downtown a lot if they wanted to. I can't think of a better location for high density affordable housing. I hope the Planning Commission will support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Back to you, Chair Fritz.
Okay, anyone in the room? Last chance. Seeing no one. And last chance, anyone online?
I'm looking through the gallery and I do not see anyone else with their hand raised online, Chair Fritz.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I will close the public comment portion of the meeting and bring this back to the commission for further discussion and hopefully resolution approval.
Yeah, before we begin discussion, I have some questions of staff and clarifications. First of all, just if we could address the comments made regarding the technical issue. I don't know if that's what that problem is or if it can be addressed, but some, two people mentioned that. So
Sure. So Commissioner Fernandez, since I am actually listening to the same audio that they are, I will note it isn't as clear as it has been, but I am able to understand everybody. I believe there has been in a couple of the last meetings issues with being able to get the microphone directly through to Zoom. So it's being run through the computers instead, which is not as good a sound as, and I believe that's something the IT folks are working on, but it's not a immediate fix for this particular meeting. That said, like I said, I am actually listening similar to everybody else, and you do need to listen carefully, but you can hear it. And fortunately, we do actually have Zoom and YouTube as a way of engaging rather than only having in-person meetings. So hopefully people can have patience with the fact that we are a small town. We do not have a permanent city council chambers, and therefore there sometimes is some compromise to the sound quality.
I just want to say, like, we can, in terms of like what we hear as the commission and the deliberating body, we can hear everyone on Zoom perfectly fine. I understand it's frustrating that you can't hear necessarily what we're saying, but it is, we are getting the information on this side.
Okay. Let's see. Also, there was didn't hear any comments on lighting. Lighting issues regarding is something everyone's kind of concerned about. Can you have any comments on that? Or I don't know if that's something the applicant, and as far as being light sensitive and reducing light pollution, and how is that issue addressed?
Yeah, John, do you want to address that in terms of the EIR?
Yeah, so there was a section on the AR about that, and they would be subject to the night sky rules and regulations, and that part of the review would be in front of the design review board if it gets to that point. But it is something that they would be subject to as part of their design proposal. And I don't know if Sam, if you want to add anything additional as far as what you guys are proposing.
Sure. It's a great question. There's actually also a condition of approval that requires lighting sensitive design. But this is something that we face a lot on different projects because we build adjacent to a lot of different uses. We've built next to senior housing, 20 feet away. We've built adjacent to, creeks. So it's really important that we follow those protocol, and that's absolutely intended to be incorporated into the design.
Yeah, and I'm aware of that information. I just wanted it for purpose of public information, so that they can hear that. I had a concern as well last time about the crosswalk intersection of Hurlbut and East Hurlbut. That is kind of a precarious situation there. I don't know if the city has any plans for that, additional safety features. Definitely is going to get a lot busier. And, I've ridden through there and I've seen some near hits, and because people just kind of come out of there pretty quick. Some people don't expect them to do that. Bicyclists or pedestrians think they have the right of way and not really maybe paying attention. So is there any comments on that part of it, anything that can be done or planning to be done?
I mean, I'll jump in. I mean, I think that is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the trail is a county trail. The city doesn't really have any jurisdiction. I don't know that we can require anything be done about the trail, especially as it relates to this project. But I think it is good to keep in mind, and staff can work with county parks on, kind of maybe addressing that crossing better. But
Yeah, I mean, I understand the physical trail part, but I'm talking about, is there additional signage that can be do that approaching that area? Or I'm just asking, what can the city do that's possible for them, just to add additional safety features? And yeah, I totally understand about the trail being part of the county.
And even Hurlbut's part of the county too, so we can't, the city couldn't put a sign on Hurlbut against the cars or anything. I think it's definitely something to work with the county about, trying to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. It's just that, it's with the project, there's going to be effects in different areas, and we can't just put blinders on, whether it's city purviews or not. But that's one area of concern that I have. The exit on let's see, that would be the south exit. When cars come out of there, is that will be allowed left-hand and right turns as well? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm most concerned about the entrance at the same place as the charter school. That's going to be a lot of traffic at certain time of day. Has there been any studies on that and the flow and what the impact may be?
Sure. I will defer to Zach Matley from W-Trans, who did the traffic portion of the EAR, to answer those questions.
Good evening, Chair Fritz, members of the Planning Commission. Zach Matley from W-Trans. I'm covering for Steve Weinberger on our office, who many of you know oversaw preparation of the study. So with respect to traffic operations, the several intersections were analyzed, including the Mill Station intersection on Gravenstein Highway and the access points, looking at various items, including traffic operations, sight distance, safety, and safety performance was, the collision experience is lower than the statewide average in that area and at that intersection. The traffic that will be added by this project actually disperses onto, the southern driveway as well as this northern driveway. There's not a really particularly high volume that gets added at that location to, cause any great concern in terms of operation and level of service. There's not a significant impact. Everything works fine. So we have, the study did evaluate that and found no concerns with that particular access point.
And what about, I know you just kind of look around that particular area. Is there any consideration to, overall traffic, other projects that are being built, and, the effect of, long waits on Highway 12 to get into town, that kind of thing? I'm just curious if any of that has been considered, looked at, or is it just only close by to the project?
Yeah, the study looked at several intersections extending down the corridor, actually into the downtown area. Also, one of the scenarios looks at a 2040 condition, where we're looking at something closer to the build out of not only Sebastopol's general plan, but other regional general plan, including regional traffic growth that is not even generated from within Sebastopol. So the project has effects on intersections. In the conclusions were there's a couple places where yes, there will have to be improvements made in the future, especially out in the county. Those are kind of known issues. They're not caused by the project. And in terms of impacts within Sebastopol itself, the project will be contributing to traffic impact fees, which are amassed and can be allocated towards things like improving signal timing or adjusting signal timing to make downtown work as efficiently as possible, recognizing that downtown will always have congestion to a degree, but the project's effects are not considered adverse.
And I'm not sure if you can answer this or someone regarding the projected number of vehicles that will be part of this project and travel trips and so forth like that.
Yes, let me find the correct information for you. So the traffic analysis really focuses on peak hour operations. So it's that AM peak hour commute period when things are really busy, and then again during that PM commute period when things are busiest. So the number of trips projected to be generated by this particular project is 44 vehicle trips during the AM, and that includes cars coming in and out combined. And during that PM peak hour, the busiest in the afternoon, it is 54 trips, which is about 32 cars coming into the site and 22 cars leaving the site.
Okay. And does any of those coincide with, particularly in the morning, with the hours of operation of the charter school?
Definitely, the AM trips would coincide with the charter school, and that is a scenario that's looked at that would be most discernible at the Gravenstein Highway, Mill Creek, and Charter School signalized intersection on Highway 116.
I think that's all the questions I have. I'll reserve my comments to when we get to that point.
Any questions, Kathy?
Yes, I'm wondering if John or the city, Carrie, do we know anything about what the county is planning to do at 116 and Occidental regarding the left and right turn lanes being extended? Is there a plan for doing that? Is anyone, maybe Zach knows about that?
I am not aware of anything. They haven't reached out to the city. I'm sure that if that was a plan or future plan, that as a neighboring city and somebody who would be affected by it, they would reach out to us as a stakeholder in that project.
Seth, anything? Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Kathy, just to acknowledge obviously the Occidental and 116 intersection will have impacts from this project as well. We are, as Zach mentioned, we have traffic impact fees to do some of the improvements internally within the city. And one of the things we got a grant for recently was both the downtown traffic with the Sustainable Transportation Grant, but also the priority development area, which will look at some of the infrastructure improvements potentially along Healdsburg Avenue. We are aware of the 21 or 22 unit project that will be that is going to be proposed. I think it came to you for preliminary review last year by Kathy Austin around Healdsburg Murphy. There are two intersections that our general plan notes to look at improving as we build out and as these parcels develop. The one is a potential light at Healdsburg and Murphy. And then the other is a light or roundabout at Covert Lane. And in talking with Zach and Steve from W-Trans, who did the traffic study for this project, the Covert Lane, they have already done a little bit of work on that and notified Caltrans, because that's obviously Caltrans right away, that we do have concerns about that. So we can start working on that as a potential improvement. The PDA grant will also does have funding to review the infrastructure further and kind of move that project along. In terms of the county's improvements on their portions of 116 that would come from the county and be paid for the county, they also collect development impact fees and traffic fees, just as we do. As most of you know, we have a lot of pass-through trips from people in the county going here and fro, and we end up making, those have impacts on our infrastructure. That doesn't mean we don't coordinate. The county is embarking on their general plan just now for their big update, the one we did in before I was here in 2016. Or I was here as a resident, but not as a staff member. And as part of the Caltrans grant and the PDA grant, we will be coordinating with both the Sonoma County Transportation Authority and the County of Sonoma. I've already spoken with the Deputy Director at the County of Sonoma about that kind of coordination for improvements, traffic improvements for flow, as well as the Director of Planning, Transportation Planning, Chris Barney at SCTA. And so they are definitely aware of, and I know they're aware of it just in general in terms of the need for looking at improvements, not particularly for this project. This project does not trigger any specific improvements, but just the cumulative development of both our general plan and the counties.
Thank you, Carrie. Seth, go ahead, you had a question,
Yeah.
comment?
Actually, I'd like to ask the applicant a couple more questions if you wouldn't mind coming up. There were several statements made through the public comment period that challenge some of the things that we'd already spoken about in terms of dimensions, heights, setbacks, and I think for the record, I'd like to just have restated a couple of things. Can you reconfirm that the maximum height of new housing is 37.5 feet?
Yes, I'm reconfirming it's 37.5. It's not
Okay.
over 40. It's not, the foundation is included. It's 37.5.
Thank you. Do you happen to know or perhaps planning department can answer this question, the height of the existing roofs of the O'Reilly building?
I do know those. So the ones that are central, that are currently constructed as you drive in that central driveway, are 49 feet and like 2 inches. That was allowed under the EIR. They were allowed to go between 49 and 50 feet for 3 stories. The 2-story buildings there are 40 feet, and that was also allowed by their final EIR that was performed in 1996.
Thank you. In terms of proximity of new housing to existing housing, do you happen to know what the closest new building is in terms of feet to an existing building?
Would it be okay to reconnect and share my screen? Because I do have sections that illustrate this.
I think that would be really helpful, actually,
Okay.
to understand the adjacency.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay. So this is actually not the slide I intended to show, but this does kind of show what this is the existing O'Reilly building that I mentioned on the top. And then the proposed structure. These are to scale proportionally. But to answer your question, I wanted to, and maybe I'll start with this one over here, because this was the one that was specifically brought up by Mr. Harris. So there is at the closest, right? I took the building that has the smallest setback from the property line, which is 28'5". This building over here increases, it's in excess of 30, and I want to say the setback for this one is in the 50 feet range. So at the closest point here, the ground floor of the structure is 64.5 feet away from the primary residence. You can see that the buildings step back as you go to the 2nd and 3rd floor, so that only increases as you get to those heights. These trees exist. They're there today. They're to scale. There's additionally a 6-foot property line fence that could go up to 8 feet at the city's option. And we are also planting an additional 135 trees on this site. And then let me keep going through the site, I think. So Here's another pinch point. So you could see this section is taken here. This is the closest that you are on this property line is the 28.5 feet away. That is 116.5 feet from the primary residence on this property here. As you go up, this number is in the 40s, or I'm sorry, I believe this one's in the 50s, and this one is in the 60 range. This one is in the 60 range as well, setback from the property line, right? So the setbacks just keep increasing. These are pinch points. And then I'll show you a final one on this property line that's here. So this one is 57.5 feet from the property line and 70.3 from the primary residence.
Thank you. I think it's really helpful to see these because it contextualizes the actual height, shape, and distances to adjacent houses.
The idea is that there's not visibility between the adjacent properties and the project. And I think the fact that there are existing trees here is a very unique thing that we're able to use as an opportunity.
A quick question on the trees. Are they deciduous or evergreen?
The majority of them are evergreen that are planted here. Let's see if I can pull up a picture really quickly.
I think a good majority of them are all redwood trees.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you can see them in here. There are some coast live oaks, but those are internal. Planting these evergreen trees was actually a condition of O'Reilly's project.
Okay.
So those were planted, I mean, and Carrie was the one that educated me on that.
Right.
But those were planted with his project for this buffer.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I would have a potential concern about the buffer not being there for several months of
6
the year.
months of the
but
year,
it
yeah.
sounds like it's year round, so that's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the commission? Would anyone like to make any comments or motions or any further thoughts?
Chair Fritz, just before that, there are two text clarifications that I need to address in the resolution.
Okay.
They're not the planning commission. I mean, they're the planning commission resolution, not the CEQA resolution. And I can bring them up real quick on the screen.
John, would you like me to bring that up on the screen at all, or
Yeah, sure.
are you
if
just
you
going to walk
can,
through?
that would be great.
Okay. It'll take me a second, but I will bring it up. And John, do you know what page of the PDF it is?
I don't off the top of my head. I can bring up the text document though.
That's 65 maybe. I'm looking, are we talking about the resolution for the density bonus tentative map, that one? Which one are we talking about?
Yes, it would be resolution 24-03.
That starts on page 64 of the PDF.
Okay, and I've actually got it in the Word document too right now, so I'll just bring up the Word document.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. So it's in the fourth whereas clause where it has the date of April 21st, 2023. That should actually read November 9th of 2022. That was when the application was submitted to the city.
Okay. So that's this one right here, John?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, it's in read
Okay.
only.
And the next one?
The second one is in the now, therefore, be it resolved. Number 2, which is down towards the bottom. It says tentative map for the creation of 80 new lots as shown in Exhibit A. It should read 2 lots, 80 residential condo units.
Okay.
And those are the only 2 modifications that I have. Thank you.
Actually, I had a question about oh, the tentative. I had something about the tentative map resolution. There was a thing that seemed like it was numbered weird. Let me see if I can find that. Oh, on. Let's see. This is page 66 of the PDF. It says, whereas granting a tentative map for the project is appropriate as it complies with SMC 16.28.070A, and then it says 2 and 3, but there's no 1.
And Chair Fritz, I didn't quite get that. If that was a question, could you speak a little bit closer to the microphone?
Yeah, sorry. So
Perfect.
this is on page 66 of the PDF, the tentative map resolution. Then it's the page at the middle of the page. It says, whereas granting a tentative map for the project is appropriate. The bullet points, the items underneath that start with 2 and then 3. There's no number 1. So I'm wondering if there's number 1 missing or if this should be number 1 and number 2.
Got it. Okay. That's an easy typo correction.
Okay. That's just the numbering.
Just need to restart the numbering. Yep.
Yeah. And then I just had a question about the conditions of approval. There's a condition of approval number 23, and this is the project-specific conditions. And it talks about the landscape, the approval of the landscape plans as submitted on whatever date. But shouldn't that maybe refer to the, like maybe something about the landscape plans as approved by the design review board, or in case, you know, there's changes that come about through that process, or is referring to the specific date close enough, I guess, is my question.
I'll let you answer that one, Carrie Ann.
Did you hear that, Carrie? Could you hear me?
I'm working on getting it up.
Okay.
And that was condition number
23.
23. I am looking at that, and yes, that should be revised to either be eliminated from this, since it would be the design review board that would be approving it.
Yeah.
Or referencing shall be generally consistent with the landscape. It's probably easier to just remove it and leave it for the design review board approval. I would say that's probably clearer.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
And then there's just in this conditions of approval document, there's just a couple other typos. In condition 20, there's some excessive spacing going on. And condition 16 should have another, be tabbed down one more time. It's too close to condition 15. Those are minor, but
Okay. And
I just had a question I want to pose to the commission. So the site, the project has, each home has 2-car garage. Then there's, I think, initial 58 surface parking spaces. There are probably at least 200 parking spaces at O'Reilly parking lot that I, would be, if the applicant's interested, letting them decide if they want to reduce their on-site, kind of surface guest parking count, because I've gone up there a couple times the past few weeks just to check it out, and I don't know what's going on at O'Reilly, but there's no one parking there. I mean, one day I counted 30 parked cars, one day I counted 22. I mean, it's just this big empty parking lot, and I, with concerns about water infiltration and all this stuff, like why are we paving over more parking, like more land up there to provide parking when there's literally hundreds of parking spaces available? And I don't know how, I mean, I don't want the developer to have to make an agreement with O'Reilly necessarily, but when I'm up there, there are obviously people that are using that parking lot just to go to the trail too. I mean, people park there to go over to the trail. They're not going there because they're actually going to those buildings. It's just very little happening up there. And I know in the future, maybe that building becomes full, but I just can't imagine them needing several hundred parking spaces, especially given the different times of use. Most of the people visiting this property, the people at this property are going to be coming in the evenings and the weekends, when even if O'Reilly is fully occupied, that parking lot's going to be empty. I mean, that's the parking lot I taught my daughter to drive in because it's so empty all the time. So anyway, I just want to throw that out there. We don't have to condition this or anything, but I just would like to offer that as if the developer wants to reduce the parking, on-site parking, and maybe they want to keep some because it's going to be, a distance to walk, but I just want to put that out there. Other commissioners are supportive of that.
yeah, and Chair Fritz, thank you for that. That is actually something that we had talked with the applicant about as a possibility as well. And she would need to respond to, complexities of an adjoining property owner. You can't force them to do a shared parking. But I will note that this would be complementary use, and our existing zoning ordinance does allow for a 15%, I believe it is, reduction in parking when there is a use like this. So if they decide, I don't believe that requires planning commission approval. That is just written into our code, so that is something they could avail themselves of if they wanted to look at that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I kind of have some similar concerns about that, and I think there's better uses that could be done. I mean, I don't want the parking space taken away and then just have concrete there. So
yeah, certainly. Yeah, adding to the 100,000+ square feet of green space, having some more opportunities for additional green space and water infiltration, I think would be advantageous, in general. And the fewer, the less asphalt we have in this world, the better, I think.
Yeah, and I think maybe just want to make sure any parking that's close to the trail, keep that in mind, that maybe vehicles, although I guess, what's the closest parking? Let's see. There's one right as you turn in, the first building on your left as you're coming in from the north. Is that parking there, or is that resident parking, or do you know what I'm talking about? If you can.
John, do you maybe want to pull the site plan up?
Yeah. So this one here. So how would you describe that? Yeah,
the one to the west of building 1,
right?
That's
so
kind of along the driveway. I'm sure that's guest parking because the driveways are on the other side.
Yeah. So I'm thinking like maybe that might be important to have there, just how close to the trail is, but I don't know.
Yeah, again, like I said, I know there's definitely people that were walking from the trail to the O'Reilly parking lot. So they would just park there instead.
Right, right.
But, they could walk to the O'Reilly parking lot too.
I could also imagine people getting permits to park there so they can use the bus.
Mhm.
It's a possibility in the future when
Okay.
there's a regular bus.
I'm sorry, are you done? Can I add one more?
Yeah, I just wanted, and
No, I
again,
think
like,
that's a good
I
point.
just wanted to put that out there to the
Yeah.
applicant if they're interested, and that everyone here seems to be generally supportive of that idea. So, yeah. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay.
Hold on, Everett. I think Sam was gonna.
Oh, so go ahead.
Well, thank you. It's definitely an idea that we would be interested in. Currently, we have 218 parking spots, which is what the city requires. It's based on 2 parking spaces for 3-bedroom homes and 3 parking spaces for 4-bedroom homes, which equates to 58 surface parking spaces. If we reduce down 3 in a specific area, we can save an additional tree. And there are some, like right as you come in from Mill Station, that maybe more beneficial to have trees there or something else that's amenity spaces. So we would be happy to look at it. I mean, we could stay within the 15%. We could use the state waiver. I mean, like there are a whole bunch of different ways that we can work with it. And I'm happy to work with planning staff on what's appropriate if the commission deems that acceptable.
Yeah, I get the sense that, go ahead, Kathy.
My only concern about that is that there's this element of ADUs being built, and that could also mean more cars. And I, hate to eliminate spots because of that issue, because it makes it harder to make that decision. And I can't remember if I asked you whether that decision for ADUs gets made when the building is built or when it's purchased or at any time. I think that was at any time, I think is what you were saying.
Yeah, it's at any time. So the initial purchaser will have the option, but we'll kind of pre-plumb everything so that later someone could convert it to an ADU if they would like to.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like it would probably make sense to keep, where you do have the ADUs, keep some surface parking near them because they're not going to have a garage space, obviously. So
Yeah.
that seems like, I'm happy to let you work that out with staff. And
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
go ahead, Everett.
Thank you. Carrie, I wanted to just clarify, or not clarify, but mention, because a couple people mentioned about, housing in Sebastopol and providing more housing. And I was kind of just top of my head thinking of all the projects we have coming online. Now, it could be looked as a positive or negative, more housing, more traffic. But if you could help me, I know the sites, the specific names or maybe how many houses are there, but I just wanted to point them out. So there's, this site, there's the site where currently the mobile home or parking, that's going to be some low-income housing there, right? How many units is that going to be or proposed possibly? Do you know what I'm talking about, where the RV parking?
Yes, so you're talking about, yes, where Horizon Shine is right now, where St. Vincent de Paul is planning a project. That would be for 22 units, which would be 1 for a manager and 20 very low income. We also have, do you want me to just run down them?
That'd be great.
Christian Fernandez, okay. Sort of a general pipeline. The Woodmark Phase 1 is under construction. That's on 7706 Bodega Avenue, Bodega and Nelson area. That is, Phase 1 is 48 units. That's under construction. That's again 1 manager unit, and then the other units are they are family housing in general. They are reserved for farm workers, though, at low and very low income. We also have 4 townhomes for the Habitat for Humanity across from Safeway. Their building permit is ready to be issued, but they have not yet done that. I would say the Gravenstein Highway is dependent on grant, the St. Vincent de Paul is dependent on grant funding and that kind of stuff. So they are just now going through design review. There are 2 units approved at Healdsburg and Murphy where that building, the Forever building, as everyone knows, on the corner, was completed. The 2 lower suites you approved to be apartments instead of commercial. I don't believe, and John would know if the permits are anywhere in our system for that. And then so I think those are the main projects right now. John, am I missing any?
So we did get the application in for Kathy Austin's project, which is right next door to that one on the corner of Healdsburg and Murphy, which is 24 townhome units. So originally during the preliminary review, that front part of the lot that faces Healdsburg would or was proposed to have a ground floor commercial component with residential above. They heard Planning Commission and DRB's concern with commercial in that project, so they have applied for a use permit to be 100% residential. So that would be an additional 24 units at that.
Thank you, John. And then Huntley Square is 10 units. Those are the mini townhomes of about 600 square feet. And just so folks know, you can go to our city website and under our community building and development projects, it sort of outlines them. So I will say obviously the Huntley Square has been taking a very long time. Hopefully you just did a time extension approval for their tentative map. And then obviously 2 or 3 of those projects are deed restricted affordable housing. The Habitat for Humanity is not deed restricted, but that is their nonprofit, focus. And so but I will say we don't have a lot of in the city in the pipeline at all right now, other than this project is the market rate and the moderate that isn't an ADU. This project would have 12 deed restricted moderate townhomes, so larger units. A lot of our moderate, if not most of it, actually comes from the inclusionary units from market rate projects like this, or the ADUs, which are obviously very small compared to a 2 or 3 bedroom.
And then we also approved potentially additional living units next to the hotel, right? There were commercial, and if someone wanted to, they could use it for living, right, space.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I wouldn't count those as residential. Those are not how those are being permitted at all.
Right,
Yeah.
Same
Yep.
as a possibility. Okay, I just thought it was important to point that out because we have a lot going on, and so Sebastopol is doing their part from that standpoint. I don't have any other questions. I just have some comments, but I'll yield to the rest of the commissioners. They want to
Actually,
start
would
out.
like to take a 5-minute break.
I
if we
think
can
that's
do
a great
that.
idea.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break and then come back and continue our deliberations. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a valid point. I mentioned that to the developer. Thank you for reminding me about that. Yeah, right. Okay.
All right, we ready to roll again?
Recording in progress.
All right, I'll bring the meeting back to order and continue on with council further deliberation or comments. Anyone want to start? Everett?
All right. Just one quick thing I had forgotten. I had was going to ask. I know there's a term for it where you take a pole and you set it to see what the height of a building would be, to kind of give a reference point.
Story pole?
Yeah, that's it. Okay. So I don't know if that's something that may help, to show what it's really going to be like, but that's just something I want to throw out there, perhaps between here and when the city council, assuming, depending on what happens here. But I think that may help explain, or at least be a reality on that. And then just wanted to just comment that regarding the 3-story versus 2-story, I'm correct. It's not like if it went down to 2-story, it would stay the exact same number of, right. So it's either the 3-story and the number of homes, or it would go 2 and it would be more homes. I mean, more living space, but also more traffic. So, but I just wanted to point out that it's not going to be like, okay, let's go to 2-story and then it's just going to stay the same, as far as units. So I think that's an important thing to point out. So I want to, if I'm just looking at this project, I think that the developer applicant has done a great job of doing their best to, I would agree that seamless is not a word that I would use, but to try to be creative and be sensitive to the area. I know you guys have brought ideas that were your own to make it a kind of a unique place. I know that you've heard citizens with their comments, and you've incorporated those and taken those to heart. So I just want to tell you that I really appreciate that, and as far as your efforts and your genuine effort to try to help with that. So I think I want to make sure and say so. Thank you for that. So I'm having a conflict, and I was going to say difficulty, but I'm finding it to be impossible to accept that this proposed use is consistent with the general plan. Okay. Because it says that the established maintenance operation of the use applied for, of the particular case, size, et cetera, that it won't be detrimental to the health, safety, peace, morals, comfort, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the area. So for those of us that are not residing in that area, we may have opinions, but really the only individuals that can say whether or not it affects them are the people that live in that area. So either you accept that it does not meet the general plan requirements because of that, and we choose to pass it anyway, or that you think that it does meet the general plan, and in your opinion, it doesn't affect, or that the people saying that it's going to affect them aren't truthful, or that they're maybe mistaken. But I just, I can't say yes or no, it's going to affect that neighborhood, because I don't live there. I just have an opinion for that. So I have an issue with that to say, yes, approve this project, and because it is consistent with the general plan. Can you help me out with that part of it? I'm trying to, that's a sticking point for me. Could be we approve this project, but it doesn't meet the consistency of the general plan. You guys help me out with that one, or staff, or whatever. If you have any comments, I would appreciate any feedback on that.
I do have comments. I don't think the general plan says that this is not going to impact the neighbors, and I don't think that we can expect any project in town to happen that's not going to impact someone in some way.
No, but that's what it says.
That's not
exactly word for word what it says. Now, maybe it's.
I don't think it says impact the neighbors.
Oh, it's read the. Let's see. I just had it up here. I'm sorry.
And I will also say that the general plan, when we adopted the general plan anticipates the development that will occur across town for the next 20 years. And the general plan, I believe, said we were going to have approximately 750 units built over the next 20 years. On a variety of sites, and this site is one of them that's identified in the general plan as appropriate for housing. The general plan actually identifies the site as being appropriate for 153 units of housing. So in terms of the relative impact that it could have on the surrounding neighbors, I feel like this is a far reduced project. They almost don't have enough density actually on the site. I mean, the minimum density for the site is 12.1 units. They're at 13.7 or something like that. They came to us with 100 units 4.5 years ago. They heard the neighbors, they responded to the neighbors, they pulled buildings back from the property lines, they reduced the number of units. I agree, I think they've been incredibly responsive. I know many developers would take a much more aggressive position on this and say, we're allowed to have 153 units. I'm going to do 153 units, and actually I'm going to invoke the state density bonus and get a 35% density bonus and go up to whatever another 35% of 153 is, and they would be completely within their legal right to do that. So I feel that this developer has made a very good attempt at trying to blend this as much as possible. I understand that the existing residents, most of those are single-family, single-story homes, and they've been there for a long time, and this has been a vacant lot for a long time, but it is in the city limits. We do have it zoned appropriately for this kind of use. They're not doing anything that is a surprise. It's a 6-acre site. We don't have, I don't think, hardly any other 6-acre sites, if any, in town that can handle this kind of development. We are in a housing emergency, a housing crisis, and I think that the overriding consideration, as several speakers tonight said, that we need housing. People are desperate for housing in this community. We are keeping people out of this community because it is so expensive to live here, and I think this answers a huge need. And in some ways, I wish there were more than 80 units here. I think they've been very sensitive. The existing trees on the site are pretty big and thick, and I appreciate the residents' concerns about the change. Change is not easy. This is a big change. It's definitely going to be a big change in the neighborhood. But as many projects have happened in the past, people are always concerned. The neighbors are always concerned about development next door. And we can't, I don't believe the city can legally even say we can stop development just because the neighbor next door is concerned about what impact it might have on them. Again, like you say that you don't know what the impact is going to be because you don't live there. I will also say the residents don't really know what the impact is going to be because the buildings aren't there either. And I think at the end of the day, well, again, it's going to be a change. Construction is going to be a bear. Construction is a noisy process, and I'm sympathetic to that. I have a house 2 doors down from me that's been under construction for 2 years now, and it's amazing how long this is going on. But at the end of the day, this is going to provide housing from the community. It's going to provide a neighborhood, and I'm hoping that at the end of the day, the existing neighbors and the new neighbors become neighbors with each other. And I do feel that the impact of these buildings is less than the commercial buildings that were already approved there. They was approved to be 50-foot, 3-story commercial buildings. There was a parking garage on that part of the property. I mean, it was approved to be intensely developed. So again, while I appreciate that it has been a vacant lot for ever, probably, it can't be expected to stay a vacant lot or underdeveloped, forever, I believe. So I feel we are within our bounds to approve this. And I do believe that, there's some subjectivity to those elements in the general plan. And that's what we're here to decide. That's our role in this process, is to determine, does this meet the standard? And I think there's so much of this meets exactly what we expected in the general plan.
No, I agree with pretty much everything you said as far as what's needed that could be much different. I was just, like I said, I'm just having that. So for example, on page 4, 2B, yes, of the 6A staff report. And maybe it's something that needs to be addressed with the general plan, but I'm just pointing out that
So Commissioner
yes,
Commissioner Fernandez, can I provide maybe a little context on this particular, because the conditional use permit, this is pretty standard language that any community has. Every time I see a use permit, it includes pretty much the same language. And what I would say on that, and so if you take each of those in turn, yes, it does not, I agree with Chair Fritz, it doesn't mean that you don't have, there isn't going to be change, and everyone likes having a vacant field, but that vacant field is someone else's private property. In terms of the actual language would not be detrimental to the health, safety, peace, morals, comfort, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the area. One of the reasons we did an environmental impact report for this project, and there are certainly communities where they would not have done that, and they would have done an initial study and a mitigated neg deck. But this project we do recognize is fairly large for the city. It's not the largest we've seen. Actually, the Woodmark project is 84 units and on 3 acres. So it's, basically twice as dense as this one is, and did not have to go through an EIR process, but still met all their requirements. But the health, safety piece, which is related to noise, both during construction and after, those were all studied in the EIR on a specific technical level in terms of what those metrics would be. So health is the contamination of the soils that's being remediated. Safety includes the intersection, the traffic, the pedestrians, the things we've talked about this evening, as well as things that are in the environmental impact report as review items. There are noise mitigations during construction, actually more so than a building permit only project would have in this community, as Chair Fritz can clearly attest to from his adjoining neighbor during construction. And you can do it 7 days a week. If it's just a building permit, they have additional requirements because of the EIR. The morals, I mean, that's really referring to something more akin to a strip joint or a alcohol, we have that with our alcohol license. Is it appropriate? Is it going to be an issue for kids? Comfort and general welfare, these really, is it going to harm versus just be a change? And yeah, to me, when we reviewed these as staff, certainly the modifications they have made to the project, stepping it further away from the neighbors, and making sure they're retaining those mitigation trees that were planted by O'Reilly. It's a pretty significant distance, and it's actually a bigger distance than if it was an adjoining county parcel of what an adjoining county parcel could do from county zoning. So it's actually much more restrictive or much further set back than it would need to be just as a general parcel in the city, but also if it were the same zoning as those on Hurlbut. So, when you talk about comfort and general welfare, you're talking about things like, are you building so close to the property line that you're depriving a home or the next structure over or their entire yard of sunlight throughout the day? And, those are the things that you all reviewed in the preliminary review. The modifications, there were some modifications made, and now it's being presented to you. The 3-story heights, there was concern from someone who's on the south side of the parcel. Well, it's not going to cast shade there. And so, they've designed it so that and of course, we'll go through design review as well in terms of the full cutoff lights and things like that. So there isn't light bleed over the property line. So that's what this means to me in my interpretation and understanding and experience as a planning director when you're looking at a project like this.
So that would apply. Is this specifically to conditional use permit? But that language also applies to the overall project, right?
I'm sorry.
So number 2B, which you just read, is that just specific to the conditional use permit, or is that language that is also applies to just the overall project?
So that's a conditional use permit requirement. So that's the conditional use permit approving it to be residential only instead of what the zone would permit by right, which would be the office buildings and those types of things.
Okay. So it's a different language of that it meets a general plan for overall the project, right? Not, let's say, not the conditional use permit. I was just trying to find that language, and I don't think it.
Right. So 1A, is it consistent with the general plan? That is, and we have a number of those items in the resolution, the Planning Commission resolution, in terms of ways that it is consistent with the general plan. And I did actually hear commissioners tonight talk about some other areas where it could also have been, where we could actually add things into the resolution if you wanted to. There are certainly interpretations and understandings, and there are sometimes conflicts between. So, the particular item that one of the members of the public brought up was community design 1-2, ensure that new residential and commercial development is sensitive to the surrounding architecture, topography, landscape, character, scale, and ambience of the surrounding neighborhood. Now, the question that comes up is, what is the surrounding neighborhood? Is it O'Reilly and Gravenstein Highway and the charter school? Or is it that plus the rural residential, which is what I would argue it's a more holistic approach. So it's not just, because it's residential, it should be 1- and 2-story like the stuff on Hurlbut. It also shouldn't be as massive as the O'Reilly building, which is why because it is sort of in between the two. And the O'Reilly building has a very long frontage, 2 buildings. This is broken down into 8 buildings. So it's obviously a matter of interpretation, but in terms of, is it sensitive? Well, I did hear commissioners earlier tonight say, well, it is keeping a lot of the trees, so it's keeping the landscape. It is, the scale of it is the same as the O'Reilly building or less. And it is stepped back away much more so from the setbacks than it was in the first iteration. There's obviously the commission's interpretation, but we as staff, that's our understanding of it.
That really helps. Thank you very much for going.
You're welcome.
I appreciate. I've always kind of had that conflict. Yeah. Like I said, I think it's a good project. It's not going to necessarily fit in like everyone would like. I still have concerns about, basically we do things and it's like, oh, we have some money set aside for traffic, but there's things that you just can't do. You can't change anything. I think it's just going to get worse. But I'm just stating that for the record. I think it's a good project. I think it's going to have impacts, and all things are going to continue to have impacts. It's going to be much harder to get in and out of Sebastopol, but I think providing living space perhaps is overall positive for it. So,
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out, I think it's been obvious, hopefully to everybody, that this project has been thoroughly vetted. It has been through a long and arduous process. It has been reviewed in every which way I think it can be, and using legitimate metrics and standards. And in my study of the EIR, draft EIR at least, it seems that there are no specific issues to be concerned about, or ones that are moderately to be concerned about. There are conditions of approval that deal with that. I don't know what else we can study, and yet this project still has to go through DRB, so it's not done yet, and City Council, right? So if we want to have conversations about how long it takes to get things built and how much it costs to build them, this is part of the issue. And I'll just throw that out there because people who build things assume a tremendous amount of risk. That said, it's appropriate for us to put projects under the microscope, and we have with this one. I think it's been very thoughtfully considered from a design perspective. The way that it interfaces with the location, can't really think of a better location in town for this, including next to a major arterial route, which it seems can in fact handle the traffic based on the traffic reports. That would not be the case in other locations. I don't think we can speculate about what may or may not happen. We can only rely on the data that we have from the exercises that have been gone through extensively by the city. And I'd like to commend the planning department for the work that's gone into this. Thank you. We need housing. It needs to be amenity adjacent. This is. It needs to be dense. I think I would concur with Chair Fritz that it could be much more dense, and I might be all right with that. But as it stands, I think we have a thoughtfully designed project. I think the applicant has demonstrated that the impact to immediately adjacent properties is mitigated by distance, it's mitigated by trees, it's mitigated by shielding windows from overlooking views, etc. And it is a much smaller scale than existing building on the site, which is the O'Reilly building. So with all that said, yeah, I think it's a great project, and it would be hard not to support it.
Anything from this end?
I will agree with everything that's been said here, especially the last comments. And I'm kind of chuckling to myself because I remember back prior to 1996 when O'Reilly came through with this project, which was just going to be this massive industrial complex. Who knew what was going to go in those buildings? And the joke that they were going to continue to grow at 10% a year for another 10 years. It could have happened. Yeah, those jobs are going to be great. But I'm kind of glad that we didn't build anything, that they didn't finish the grand scheme. And I'm remembering even before that, it must have been in the early 90s when it was going to be a so-called affordable housing project. And the affordable component was a two-story apartment building on the south side, which at the time was not very far from the AmeriGas tanks, which are known to explode from time to time. So the developer was going to build a 25-foot cinder block wall supported on the north side by the 25-foot mound of soil, which was going to be part of the children's play area. And yeah, we had to laugh at that one. Thank goodness we weren't crying about what might have happened if they had built it. So I'm sort of glad we held out here and that those things didn't happen and that we're getting the project that we are getting and that the infrastructure to support this new influx of population is there for it, notwithstanding what the county might do with the roadway to the to the north on 116, because that is already in some ways a bigger problem because it's going to grow so much more and it takes so much of the burden away from downtown Sebastopol. I think it's really key for us to encourage the county to work on those on that area at Occidental 116. So I'm definitely in favor of this project. It makes me wonder if it got turned down or didn't get built for some reason, what we might get next, since there are no more apple orchards there.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what has been said. Again, I feel like the developer has really made an effort. It has been a long, very long, arduous process, and as Commissioner Hanley said, very expensive process. And people do question, like, why is it so expensive? I mean, I'm sure to this point, the developer spent in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to this point, and they don't even have a project yet. So this is, why development's expensive, but we do have this process that we go through, and the developers go through it with us, and it takes time. But I agree. I think it's been thoroughly vetted, and I think it's a reasonable compromise. The things that have been done, for sure. And I think it's a very appropriate site for this. It is close to a lot of services. It's great to be so close to the bike trail. It's easy access to downtown. And regarding the traffic, I mean, I really feel like there is traffic at times in Sebastopol. We know when it is, we know where it is. It's not a surprise. It's usually around school time when Annalie gets out of school and people are picking up their children. But to be honest, a lot of what the traffic that Sebastopol experiences is because the county has approved, tens of thousands of housing units west of Sebastopol without providing appropriate vehicular infrastructure to get them there. They all have to go through Sebastopol. I mean, if Sebastopol was a community of actually 700-800 people, without 40,000 people in West County, we would not have at all the traffic issue that we have. And so putting more units in town, alleviates the pressure to build more units outside of town. So putting 80 units here is going to have a much lower impact on the traffic than putting 80 more units in West County, because those people are going to have no choice but to drive into Sebastopol. Or the people living in these 80 units will be able to walk and will be able to bike, and I hope that they do that, and I'm sure they will. So I appreciate people's traffic concerns, but really, if we want to do anything about traffic, we need to be building more projects like this in town, so that we're not building more single-family homes in West County, because that's what really impacts our traffic. So anyway, it sounds like we're.
Yeah, can I just
yeah, go ahead.
Just one more comment. This is a pretty complicated project, and I really appreciate the different viewpoints, expertise, backgrounds, all of the stuff that you guys bring up. I do listen and appreciate the different expertise and viewpoints. So thank you for sticking with this, and it's good to have this team up here. So thank you. All right.
Thank you. So just to clarify with staff, so we need 2 separate motions, one for each resolution, correct?
Yes.
All right. So
yes, and Chair Fritz, because I've actually been listening to the discussion and kind of writing into the record a couple of things that have been said, and the questions that some of the commissioners have had about the general plan consistency. When we get to the Planning Commission resolution regarding the general plan consistency and the use permit, I do have a couple of potential amendments. I don't know if you want to discuss those now or later, just to kind of, and what I'm thinking is it may help City Council. They don't have as much time on their docket. They really rely on this body. And so it may be helpful to add a couple of findings from what I've heard tonight to your resolution to kind of address some of those questions like what Everett had earlier.
Sure, go ahead. Why don't we talk about those now?
Okay. I will share my screen, and what I have is so under the finding, the whereas, which is the finding regarding the use permit, and so that's the health, safety, morals. And John did a great job of writing most of these up, but I think it may be. Well, let's start with the one because this may just be what helps explain sort of what I reiterated about the environmental impact report in terms of the health and safety of the community and the residents. So the proposed addition would be that the project underwent an environmental impact report, which requires mitigations related to noise, drainage, soil remediation, and light glare. And I don't know if there are others that folks would want to add to ensure health and safety to the community and the new residents, because it's certainly the new residents in terms of the soil remediation and drainage and things as well. And then maintaining the existing trees and screening to the adjoining residential areas, as well as appropriate setbacks to adjoining properties. Because they did increase those, like I said, which is more significant than would be required. And then up in the general plan consistency, to add community design policy 1.2, since that was a question for some of the folks, or concern for some of the public commenters tonight. And that is, that policy is, to read it fully, ensure that new residential and commercial development is sensitive to the surrounding architecture, topography, landscape, character, scale, and ambience of the surrounding neighborhood. That's the policy, and this meets it in that it has the same scale or lower than the adjacent office buildings. It has significant setbacks from adjoining residential structures. It breaks down the massing of the development by proposing 8 separate structures for the units, and it retains the majority of trees between the site and the adjoining residential uses, and maintains 2/3 of the site as open space.
And maybe add additional trees are going to be planted if that's appropriate there.
And we'll be planting additional trees. Thanks.
And can we confirm it? I thought it was more than 8 buildings. Are there more than?
Sorry, thank you.
That seems like there's a lot more than 8.
It would be good to get the right number of buildings, but you know, that is the intent. Yeah, unlike Woodmark, which is, or O'Reilly, where it's fewer larger buildings. Sam, John, do you know how many?
John says it's 20.
20, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John.
I don't know where I got 8. Okay. Okay, so I don't know if there are any comments or discussion on that, Chair Fritz, but those are 2 additions that I'm recommending as staff.
Can I don't have every piece of the the 1,000-page EIR memorized. I'm just wondering if there are any other kind of big category items from the EIR that required mitigation.
One of the mitigation measures that we might want to mention in the first bullet that Carrie showed is the air quality mitigation, which is related to reducing pollutant concentrations. There are also other mitigation measures, but are less related to the issue where the bullet point was added, for like cultural resources and biological resources that probably don't need to go into that bullet specifically.
Did you get that, Carrie?
I got most of it. What I heard, if I heard it right, there are obviously other mitigations, because there's mitigations throughout, but not so many that are related to this particular policy or requirement. Did I hear that right?
The construction toxic air contaminant mitigation probably is relevant and could be added to the first section
Got it. Okay.
you showed us. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. So I'll add air quality, since that's the general topic that falls under.
Great. Thank you.
And Paul, what about the, what you mentioned about parking? Is that something that we might want to put in for city council to think about? Or
I'm happy with just leaving this between the applicant and staff. I don't think we need to make a statement about it, but I just wanted to throw it out there and give that as an option. If that's something that's already part of our zoning code and they have that option, then I'm just letting.
Yeah, somehow I think those comments would be important for passed on to city council.
I'm sure one of us will need to be at the city council meeting to explain all this.
Yeah,
Not sure
I think you'll do a good job.
What's that?
I think you're going to do a great job.
When is that?
April
It depends.
hopefully.
Yeah, if you approve the resolutions tonight, we do have it tentatively scheduled for April 2nd.
Okay, I can do that if I need to. Yeah. Okay. So we do need, it sounds like two motions, one for the approval of the final environmental impact report document, and then one for the entitlements. So
Yes, and we do need the CEQA first.
CEQA first. Okay, let's do the CEQA first.
So I motion for approval of the CEQA report.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, and John or Katie, can you read the full title of that resolution just for the record? I can also get to it if we need to.
I can do it. I have it pulled up right here.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair.
So this is to approve the Planning Commission Resolution number 24-02, resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Sebastopol recommending the City Council certify the environmental impact report and adopting findings pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act for the property at 1009 and 1011 Gravenstein Highway North, APN 060-261-026 and 060-261-028.
Thank you. And I don't believe we had any staff modifications to that one. It was simply the Planning Commission resolution.
Correct. All right, so we have
So I'm happy to do a roll whenever you're ready.
No further comments? All right, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Ottinger,
Aye.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hanley,
Aye.
and Chair Fritz.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes 4-0 with one commissioner absent, Commissioner Burns. And so the next resolution before you is resolution number 24-03, which is a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Sebastopol recommending the council approve a use permit, vesting tentative map and density bonus for the property at 1009 to 1011 Gravenstein Highway North, with the APNs as mentioned previously. And this would be with the modifications that both John Jay read into the record earlier regarding the tentative map and the date, November 23 date change, and the modifications that were made to, sorry, those would be the additions to the general plan consistency for community design and the use permit findings.
Do I have a motion?
I will so move.
Thank you, Kathy. A second?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair Fritz, sorry, one last thing. And this would also include the modifications to the conditions of approval that Chair Fritz, that you had recommended earlier, which was deleting the landscape and a couple of typos.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
I so move.
Thank you, Kathy.
Second.
Thank you, Seth. Any further comments or discussion? Okay, can I have a vote? Please, Carrie.
Okay, Commissioner Ottinger,
Aye.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Hanley,
Aye.
and Chair Fritz.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The motion passes 4-0 with one absent. Again, Commissioner Burns is not here tonight.
Great. Thank you, everyone. That was a lot of work. Glad we got through it all. Thanks to you guys.
Thank
for bringing this
you.
project to us. Look forward to seeing your building permit application.
Yeah,
I know
what
there's
a-
a few
And
steps
just to
get there. There's a few
reiterate,
steps to get there, but I'm anxious to get the building permit application.
for members of the public, this is not a final decision. This is a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the City Council. They are the final approval body. And tentative, so mark your calendars, but don't set it in stone. The most likely date for that and the one that is tentatively scheduled for is April 2nd. Same time, same place.
Okay, moving on with our agenda. We have no regular agenda items. Do we have any subcommittee updates from anyone? Okay, how about a planning director's report?
Sure, thank you. The couple of items. One is our Public Art Committee did meet today, and they have a call out right now for a commissioned piece of artwork at the trailhead of the Joe Rodota Trail across from the Hot Monk, where there's that sort of little triangle of land on Petaluma Avenue. And today they selected 3 finalists for them. Susie will be getting those finalist proposals up on the website either this week or next week. But the way the process works is we will be having a public meeting towards the middle part of April where each of those artists will present to both the Public Art Committee, but also to the public. And we'll also be inviting our Regional Park Advisory Committee, because it is actually regional park land that we're doing this in partnership with. But it is a sort of a significant demarker to downtown Sebastopol, since it's sort of right at the start of downtown at Calder Creek. So that's actually very exciting. There are 3 fabulous proposals. I think you'll all enjoy seeing those. And the other component that I wanted to let you know, we are in the midst of budget process development. We'll be coming with you with parks improvement planning at one of your upcoming meetings. It will probably be fairly slim this year just because we have a couple of the bigger projects that are still underway. The AmeriCorps Trail is a significant one there. Council did approve a budget amendment a couple of meetings back for that project. There are some environmental permits that are necessary because of the creek, the proximity to the creek. We were told a long time ago we didn't need them, but sometimes things change, and now we do. So we have a consultant who's already been communicating with Fish and Wildlife and the Water Board regarding those, moving that forward, but that did add to that project cost. That is the one that's funded by Ag and Open Space as well, and so we do need to complete that this year. So we will be bringing you a park planning, capital improvement planning update, but I don't anticipate a huge number of new projects between that project, finishing up a couple of the other projects that are on the board. And then also we're next Tuesday night, there will be a presentation about the long-range financial forecast for the city. And that will sort of set the context for the budget discussions to come and the budget discussions that have happened in the last couple of months as well. And then, so that is, if you are interested, that's next Tuesday. What I'm anticipating out of that for parks is that a lot of the Measure M park funds, because these can be used for maintenance, will probably be very heavy on the maintenance this next year. I know that's also a priority for the commission, but that is certainly sort of helping to fill that as to ease some of the city general fund issues is something that we'll be looking at. we are anticipating revenues next year from Woodmark and some others to our park funds, but just in the meantime, that is likely to be the path forward. We are anticipating that they will also be talking about the structure of some of the committees and boards within the city. And so again, that's something that the commission may want to either review the report this at the end of this week or join in that discussion. The other items of interest, we do have our annual Peace Wall nominees going before the council. That's a consent item. It usually is the last few years. The council approves that, and then they do the ceremony in the spring. And then we have design review board interviews and appointments at the next meeting as well. And John, are there any other project updates that you have?
Yeah, I'll just update the commission on the active transportation plan that the county's going through right now and how it relates to us. The SCTA and consultants are looking at bringing their milestone 2 update to the Planning Commission at the April 9th meeting. And that will be kind of going over and providing some potential projects and data and analysis that they have been compiling since the last meeting we had at the end of last year, I believe it was, where it was an introduction to the Planning Commission for this project. We'll also be looking at doing some additional public engagement as part of that process. I do anticipate having a discussion item on the next Planning Commission meeting of the 26th to see what commissioners would be interested in partaking in part of that. We were subject to Brown Act stuff, but I'll clear that up with the city clerk and whatnot, because I did hear some comments from members of the public that a project like this is difficult to engage with the Planning Commission in a public meeting format, as they're only subject to 2 or 3 minutes of public comment time. And this project definitely deserves more time than that. So having some sort of workshop or open house type of event where if there's any Planning Commissioner members that are interested in joining, that would be great. But that's all that I have on my end, Carrie.
Great, thank you. I just want to make note, I'm actually going to be out of town April 9th, the first meeting in April.
Good thing we have a vice chair.
Good thing we have a vice chair. Make it easy on them, okay? And yeah, does anyone else? Go ahead, Everett.
Yeah, John, what you just mentioned. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I can do to help, but help put some events and projects together. So maybe I can lend a hand. And then Carrie, during kind of this downtime or in between, would this be a good time maybe to tackle the creek, I don't know, what do you call it? The creek care protection language, the creek ordinance?
So
it's in our work plan. So
it is in our work plan, but it is not the higher priority. It may be downtime for the commission, but and this is a couple of updates. The Sustainable Transportation Grant interviews are tomorrow for that project, and we're currently working on, or we'll be working on as soon as we have time, our Priority Development Area Grant. That's the grant that will be looking at the 116 corridor, including those infrastructure improvements that I talked about tonight. That is a big component for us. So there's a staff capacity, especially with budget season and all of these other projects going on. We do have the SB 9 regulations, which will be kind of the next thing. We have the admin draft of that. But we haven't started public review. And so that would be the next component of it so that we can finish up that project before we start one of the other work plans. But the PDA project is actually, in essence, a housing element, one of our housing element components to look at do you need a use permit along 116 and in some of those areas for residential, or are there areas where it can be, where we would change the zoning? And so that's really our next, for this commission, a bigger priority.
Okay. No, fair enough. I was just kind of thinking, before more projects come, kind of put the language in to, help with that along. But I totally get your timeline, and yeah, whatever you pick those priorities that you guys can handle. The other thing is just, I don't know if anyone or you have had a chance to speak to Commissioner Burns. I like having her on the commission. I don't know, I know she's having some difficulties. It might impact us considering the 5-person commission, and we need 3 in person for quorum. So I don't know if the chair or Carrie, someone just kind of maybe touch base with her.
Yes, yeah, I believe John has, and I can certainly do that again as well.
Okay. Yeah, and she actually reached out to me because she's had something she wanted to put on an agenda. So I'm going to talk to her later this week, actually. So I'll ask her about that.
All right.
All right, great. If we have nothing else, I will adjourn our meeting and see you all back here on March 26th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.